Welcome once again to the Savvy Investor Radio Show and podcast with the team at Prostatis Financial. Ryan Herbert is here today. Catherine Gross is here today, and we're talking through some of the issues of retirement. And sometimes we look into the financial headlines and financial radio and TV, and you look at some of the people out there and go and cock your head like a Cocker Spaniel and go, really? Did he really say that? Yeah, well, Dave Ramsey has caused a stir in the past. Not that long ago, he said you should be able to take 8% of your money every year and not worry about running out. And everybody went crazy. Well, just recently, Dave said something else that's got everybody's attention, and that is you should take your Social Security at 62, even if you're working, as long as you have the discipline to invest it wisely. All right, I'm just going to step back from the microphone now and let Ryan go at it. I'm thinking that you probably don't agree with Dave in this particular area.
No, and I can't say the words I would like to say on radio or on our podcast, but I'm not a fan of Dave Ramsey. I'm just going to say that I'm not a fan of him, and counter to what most people's opinions, I dislike him more than I dislike Susie Orman.
Wow. Okay.
That's my personal opinion, and it's just because his advice. He's really good for people who are bad with money, people who are bad with budgeting, people who are bad with spending, who like to rack up credit card debt or, small, high interest loans, that type of stuff. So, he has really good advice for paying down your debt, creating an emergency fund so that you're not caught in this vicious cycle of putting everything on a credit card and then struggling to pay it back at high interest. So he's really, really good at that. I think that what he lacks is, overall financial retirement advice. I do think that he is out of touch with that. And I think the perfect example is, a couple of years ago when he said you can take out 8% of your money and statistically speaking, never run out of money. Well, that's never been the rule or something suggested. Maybe back in the 80s and 90s where all the stock market did was go up. But certainly now, I think the number is close to like 2.8%. But, I'm just not a fan. Taking your Social Security early, I think is can be a good idea if you need the money. But like he's saying, if you're working, taking it out, Catherine and I were just talking about this off the air about, that's not the best idea, I don't think.
Yeah, he didn't even mention the penalty here. So Social Security is designed where you can take it as early as 62 or wait till full retirement age, for which most people is, 66 and 10 months or 67, or the latest you can defer it is 70. And the problem with taking it at 62, even though you're working, is that you have to make under a certain amount of money or they're going to penalize you for every dollar you make over that.
$23,400. I don't know how many people in Maryland, if you're working full time, that are, making. Certainly there are a lot of people that are making less than that, but most people who are thinking about retirement planning, they're earning more than $23,400 a year.
Mm-hmm. Even my people that are doing like a staged retirement where they've gone from working full time to part time are still making over that $23,400. So not only are you going to be penalized $1 for every $2 you make over that number, you're also going to pay tax on that money. So his advice here to have the discipline to invest it wisely. I mean, unless you're making 35% returns on that reinvestment to cover the tax and the penalty, I don't see where that's a win-win for anybody.
The caveat there, Catherine, is he says you should take that Social Security money and you should invest it in a mutual fund and get 10%. That's what he says after that. That's where you put the money. That's what you'll get, and that will put you ahead.
Yes, I mean, at 10%, he's recommending a mutual fund, which once again, I don't agree with. But, let me take out my Social Security. Number one, I'm taking a 32%, 38% hit on my Social Security because I'm claiming it early. I probably don't need the money if I'm still working. So I'm taking a hit on the amount I'm getting in Social Security. Because I'm still working, I'm giving them $1 for every $2 I am over the limit of earning. And then I'm paying tax on all of my Social Security, even the amount of money I'm paying back to them as penalty. I'm still paying tax on that. And oh, by the way, if I'm making $180,000 a year and I'm now bringing in an extra 30 grand from Social Security, well, now the tax on my 180 has gone up because I've potentially crossed over a different tax bracket. So, if I'm investing this money, I'm taking it. I'm losing probably 30 to 40% of my money right off the top to taxes and penalties. And then I'm going to turn around and invest it and get 10% on my money. That's a very, 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 very long break even point from that perspective. So, I don't necessarily agree with that statement, claiming it and while still working and claiming it early.
Yeah, I mean, that's just very, very bad investment advice. The only time where I've really seen where it makes sense for people to take Social Security at 62 is it's in my stepdad. He had a rare blood disease where his lifespan wasn't going to be that long. So, he was self-employed. So on paper, he made under that, with expenses from his business. He took Social Security early because he knew that he wasn't going to live for 10, 12 years in the future. So that made sense for him to take that money. Or people that are working part-time just because they want something to do. I have two clients that came in. They were referrals from clients of mine where the husband's retired. The wife still teaches part-time, but she just does it because she enjoys it, not for the money. And she's making under that $23,000 a year by doing the part-time teaching, substituting. And when they came in, they were dead set on taking Social Security at full retirement age, which when we ran the numbers for them, it was the opposite. It made more sense for them to take Social Security at 62 because of the money they were taking out of their portfolio to wait until full retirement age to start drawing Social Security. So there's very specific situations in which it makes sense to take Social Security at 62, but never does it make sense to take Social Security at 62 when you're working and making over that $23,000 threshold.
Ryan, one of the things that people don't think about too much is that the idea that when one spouse dies, the lower Social Security payment goes away. So if you lock yourself in at 62 and then you pass away as the higher earner and the higher Social Security check at 72, your spouse is going to be stuck with a lower payment for the rest of her life. And I mean, that's an issue that really has to be brought up as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of all part of the calculations that we run when we're looking at income and retirement. We have this great tool that Catherine mentions. It's a Social Security optimization thing that basically tells us, based on your life expectancy, here's the best time to collect Social Security. And like she, joked, but it is kind of the truth. If you can tell me the exact day, the exact age you'll be when you're going to die, I'll tell you the best age for you to collect Social Security. But really, it comes down to income and retirement. How can we make retirement work for you? If you want to retire at 60, well, claiming Social Security at 62 might be one of the things we have to do. If you're going to work at 60, go at 64, well, maybe we can delay out till your full retirement age of 66 and X months or 67. It's a very, very situational answer to the question because it does depend on life expectancy. So, I'm going to ask the questions of are your mom and dad still alive? How old were they when they passed away? Do you have brothers and sisters? Are they still alive? How's your health? That type of thing. But then it's also, how feasible is it for us to delay taking Social Security? How much of your assets are we going to spend down by delaying that payment? And then, shifting to that other side of things, because you always have to be cognizant of the fact that one spouse is going to outlive the other. Normally it is women because men are stupid and we do stupid things. My wife, we're only in our early 40s, but, longevity is on my wife's side, and if this was a decision that I was having to make today, I would probably be trying to delay my Social Security for as long as possible because I am the higher earner. My Social Security is going to be a lot higher than hers will be. But, her one grandmother lived until I want to say she was 92 years old, and her other grandmother is 102 and still kicking. Just had a hip surgery and doing fine. But, longevity is on her side. So that's one of those things that we need to consider, is this, because when you have two spouses collecting Social Security, one of them is less than the other pretty much all the time, unless you've been working, similar income levels. But oftentimes we see that one spouse, often the wife, her Social Security is lower, the husband's is higher. When the husband passes away, what people don't think is that, all right, together, as we're both alive, we're bringing in $5,000 a month coming in. Well, all of a sudden, the one spouse dies, you're losing $1,500 a month because the wife's Social Security has gone away because now she stepped up to the higher amount. Can we make that work? Can that surviving spouse live on $3,500 a month? Well, yes, maybe they can. Yes, there are some expenses that go away because now there's one person, less energy, lower energy bill, lower utility bills, less food bill, probably not traveling as much. But there are certain things that one spouse does around the house, whether it's the husband or the wife, whoever passes away. There are certain things that they do that the surviving spouse is now going to have to pay someone to do. So while, yes, some expenses will go down when one spouse passes away, and you might be able to afford that reduction in Social Security, certainly there are other expenses that are going to go along. So you want to have a plan for the potential of losing that Social Security, whether, you lose it early because one spouse dies prematurely, or you lose it later in life. Or even, I like to say this, what is the plan if all of a sudden Social Security cuts those benefits? They've been talking for years that they are underfunded. As of 2028, the Social Security Trust Fund will run out, and by 2032, we're going to start paying, 77 cents on the dollar a benefit. Mm-hmm. Do you have a plan for that? Do you have a plan for a potential reduction in the Social Security income? And most people don't. When they come to see us, I ask them that question. They just kind of gave me this look of, I didn't really think of that. It's the government. The government's just going to take care of me like they always do. Well, kind of what are they doing right now? They're arguing over something with this government shutdown, but why not put a plan in place to, what happens if I predecease my spouse? How are they going to replicate that income? What happens if Social Security cuts the benefits while my spouse and I are alive? How am I going to replicate that income? Part of what we do in our income analyzer consultation is figuring out all those scenarios and giving you actionable items that you can implement in your financial plan. But it all starts by giving us a call at 866-597-1040, 866-597-1040, and sit down with Catherine or myself or Lawrence or Faisal or any one of my advisors and let us help show you, the best time for you to collect Social Security. Here's what income can look like for you in retirement. And here is plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E for you in retirement should the worst case scenario happen. 866-597-1040, 866-597-1040, or visit us on our website at thesavvyinvestorradio.com. There's a button at the top of the page that says schedule my call without ever having to pick up the phone. thesavvyinvestorradio.com.
It is kind of tempting. You get to 62, you're still working, and then you go, I could give myself a raise with Social Security. Well, there's a lot to talk through when it comes to that decision, and we've been talking through it today. We would love to have the opportunity to talk to you. If you've saved $500,000 or more for retirement, that is where you'll really see the power of planning really start to kick in. Social Security planning, income planning, tax planning, legacy planning. It's all there under that umbrella of retirement planning. Give the team a call at Prostatis Financial, 866-597-1040. Schedule a time. You can do it right there on the website if you'd like, 866-597-1040 or thesavvyinvestorradio.com.